Good evening. I call to order the regular meeting.
Abel.
Here.
Coop.
Here.
Franks. Gutwein.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Welcome to Chambers, everybody. I appreciate I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated.
Colfax Marathon.
All right. I'd like to welcome down Andrea Dowdy. Welcome, CEO of the Colfax Marathon. It's always nice to see you out here, and it looks like you have some stuff. You brought us some swag as well, some new sunglasses.
I figured that everybody would listen more if I had swag, but I love the fact you have the sunglasses on. That is awesome. The first thing I want to do is say thank you for letting us be here tonight and introduce Jean Suchia, Government Relations Specialist for Kaiser Permanente.
Right. Good evening. Welcome, Gene. Nice to see you. Thanks for coming out tonight.
Nice to see you as well. Thank you, Andrea. Good evening, Mayor Paul, members of council. My name is Gene. As Andrea mentioned, I'm with the Kaiser Permanente Government Relations team, specializing in local government. I am honored to be here tonight with our partner from the Colfax Marathon. KP's mission is in part to improve the health of the communities we serve. And that's really why we value our partnership with the marathon so much. Not only does it get Coloradans out and about on that long, very long course, but it also promotes economic vitality in the communities and the neighborhoods as well, all along the course in every single part of the municipalities and counties and even the districts that it goes through. We are particularly appreciative of the city's support, including the participation, of course, of mayors and council members, both past and present. As some of you may already know, we are pretty deeply rooted in this particular city. Our medical office building right down the street is, if you didn't know this, our second oldest in the state. It's quite old, but we kind of love it. And we are proud, of course, to count many Lakewood employees, Jeffco Public School teachers and employees, and others as members of Kaiser Permanente as well. And we are very proud to support other community organizations like Lakewood on Parade, Sprout City Farms, the Jeffco EDC, the Jefferson Foundation. We were lucky, and I missed it, but we were lucky to have the mayor join us for a volunteer project at a community garden just a couple of weeks ago
Planted
as well.
strawberries.
All of the support that I was just mentioning, of course, extends to the direct care that we also provide in the community, including to the community's most vulnerable. We provide care to roughly 3,000 Medicaid and CHIP Plus members, which is something we take actually great pride in. There aren't many health plans out there that really emphasize that type of work. I do need to get in a plug here. Andrea mentioned this to the mayor earlier. There are a lot of other public officials that take part in the Colfax Marathon, so my plug here today is mayor and council should consider putting together a team. Other councils around the area have been as well. I think it's obviously in good fun to do something like that for the community. Thank you again to the city. We are also here to recognize the tremendous participation of the Jeffco Public Schools employees, so we want to congratulate them as well. And also a big shout out to those that make the marathon possible, including PD, Fire, West Metro, of course. So thank you to all of those groups as well. Have a great night.
Thanks, Gene.
Great. I brought notes with me because, not because they're so long is what I have to say, but I thought maybe if I had notes, I can go quite quickly because I know you got budget and important things to do tonight. So thanks again for having us here. This year, 17,000 runners, many of which got out to Lakewood, which is terrific. We had over 1,200 relay teams, one of the largest in the country. So we're super excited. It's just been a great year. This year, over 218 nonprofits used us to raise money or awareness, raised over $500,000, and we're working with them every day to help them raise even more funds using the marathon. So it's just been a very fun year. I wanted just to start right away and just say sincere thank you to the City of Lakewood. We had so many parts of Lakewood that participate every year, and I started making a list, and that got very long. But 40 West Arts District and Bill Marina bringing in the Classic Cars group to entertain runners. Nina Rockley and Rockley Music are always wonderful. We love the fact that the Morse neighborhood, Two Creeks, and the Glens all provide support to runners, whether it's food, cleaning up Colfax, and even just providing orange smiles and a few cheers in the Glens. It's a really tough part of the course when you get out that far. So the runners just, it's amazing when they come back and said the neighborhoods were really out and supported us this year. We love the fact too that REMCAD allows us to put headless mannequins on the course. That is the only one in the world, only race in the world that has headless mannequins. We think it's truly Colfax, and that's what we are every day, is truly Colfax. Those mannequins now are just outstanding. They brought a lot of media attention this year, and we love the fact that we can put them all through REMCAD and have a great time. So right now, I just wanted to bring back down Mayor Paul and to give a thank you, and we have a few gifts for you tonight. So we like Mayor Paul. We love when the mayor gets super involved on race day. Of course, we'd love him to run all 26.2 miles, but we know that didn't happen this year. So instead, he ran it in his car. He was at the start of the marathon, which was terrific. Then he was at the start of the Urban 10 Miler, which was terrific. So I think you covered quite a lot of ground that day. So we have a few things for you. First of all, every day we want you to remember who we are.
There we go,
So
the
there
facts.
Yes. So you've got your trucker hat to wear to work.
All right.
Plaque. And then this was a really special part of the race this year. We had Silver Setmeyer was an artist that run the
nice.
art contest that was done here called the Four Seasons of Colfax. And so we wanted to mount one of these
Oh,
prints
cool.
that she did. And runners that ran 2 days this year actually got a copy of this print, but we thought it would be something special you could hang in one of your conference rooms.
How wonderful. Every year you give us a very nice piece of art. Very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you. Then I had a few more groups I wanted to thank. You want to stand up and thank them with me?
Yeah,
That
I
would be
do.
great. Okay.
Certainly do.
So thank you. Always love to have a little bit of help here. Lakewood Police. We just love every year that we know that when we're back in City Park, really focusing on runners starting and finishing and all the celebration, we know that our runners are out here and they're safe and out in Lakewood. So I just want to bring up Sergeants David Hoover and Bill Blackburn because I have some special gifts for them. I was just telling Sergeant Hoover, I love the call that he always places at about 11 or 12 o'clock that morning on race day to say, we're all good and we're all cleaned up here in Lakewood. So it's just a great feeling. So we have, these go well with your uniform? I think there's cardboard in them though. I'm not sure you're allowed to wear them with the uniform, but.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Oh, cool.
And plaques. So thank you. They're also part of our event committee because there's so much intricate happenings that are at the start of the Urban 10 Miler that it's wonderful that they're here and they're part of our event committee. They can work with our race directors to make sure that we have over 1,000 people that start that race in REMCAD, and they can really help us make that really a successful race and a really unique race in Colorado as well as in the country. Not a lot of people do what we do out in Urban 10 Miler. The other thank you I want to make, and I know he's not here tonight, is once again to West Metro Fire, Dean Wall. These are for Dean.
I think
Will
they
ya?
forfeit this.
Yeah, I think they forfeit if they don't come. But Dean himself brought in 73 volunteers this year, which is nice. And West Metro Fire, the runners love the fact that when they hit Sheridan, those big ladder trucks with the American flag, when you're running, having a visual like that is just absolutely so, it really is really empowering when you're running through and you see so much support and you really feel like this is something I've truly accomplished. So we want really thank West Metro Fire for all their participation. Also want to acknowledge the runners from 2 Lakewood middle schools that won money for Jeffco Schools Foundation. They won, first of all, there were teams from Carmody Middle School, Keep Calm and Teach On. They got first place in the women's division of the Government Cup. I mean, they were running against Aurora Fire Women. This is not an easy task. They got $2,500 for Jeffco Public Schools Foundation, so that's terrific. And they also had Creighton Middle School, Hello from the Finish Line. At least they didn't say, let's just turn around and be at the finish line. But hello from the finish line, and they placed 5th in the public schools division. This year we gave $1,000 to 6 schools, and the teachers got to give the money directly to their school. So they got $1,000 for their school for running fast. They love the program so much, we love the program so much that we're going to do 10 schools next year. So really excited. But I am excited also about the Lakewood City Council team. I think this is a really good idea. I can tell you right now, if you put your hand up and you say, I will run with Mayor Paul, that we will provide you a matching trucker hat. So any takers, we have one, right?
I'll run with, if Mayor Paul will run.
Oh, okay. First 2, I think I have 2 hats with me. Those are the first 2 volunteers. I'll bring those up. And I'm going to say thank you again. And we'd love to see if we could have a quick photo op with the sergeants as well. I also want to thank our photographer of the evening, Angela Klein, who's one of our board members. Round of applause, because it's a lot of work to be a board member. So thank you so much. Okay.
Right, 1, 2, 3, Colfax. Lovely.
All right. Thank you.
Well, you don't get to leave yet, so I just wanted to say, I mean, we talked a little bit about how far this goes back, and I think one of the founding members was Mayor Linda Morton. So this has really gone kind of through the test of time, and it's amazing to see how much energy you bring out along the course. People get so excited, and all the different groups that you help, we're very grateful, and you're a great partner as well as Kaiser Permanente. And we used to actually have a city team. I think Miss Hodson ran on it one year. Okay, so now we got 4 runners. How many more do we need?
We need 1 more.
All right, we're locked in.
All right, we're locked in. That's great.
And this is run walk, right?
Yes. So the mayor will do the first leg, and you do need to run the first leg because you got to get going. But you know, if a couple of legs later on, if you need to do a mix of running and walking, you can do that because he will have, you know, really picked up so much time and pace those first few miles. You're going to be good to go. So, yes, wonderful.
You're in trouble. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Angela will be distributing hats.
Must be what happens when
Yeah, well, thank you. That's yours. Yes.
all right.
And this is for the fire.
All right, I start my training tomorrow. Next up, we have public comment. And this is the point in the meeting where the public is invited to address the city council on items that did not appear on the agenda. All comments should be directed to the city council. I ask that all in attendance observe the decorum of the city council chambers and refrain from applause or audible support or discord with the speaker. There is a 3-minute time limit. You will see this little device. It'll glow green until you're at 2.5 minutes, which will then turn yellow. And when your time is up at 3, it'll turn red, and I will politely try to wrap you up and move you along. We have a few folks who've signed up tonight. And just before I jump into this, I think this might have to do with a rezone that's coming before us. Is that correct? Mr. Cox, we're fine to take, since the whole body is here, are we fine to take public comment on that?
Well, the preferred course is not to do so because there may be other interested people, including the applicant or, and I don't know who these folks represent, but people who'd be interested in participating who didn't know this was going to be a discussion about that case. So once it's in that quasi-judicial mode, we encourage people to bring their concerns to the public hearing, or if they can't be there, to submit them in writing in advance for the council to consider.
Okay. So is this is in the quasi-judicial phase then? I imagine this is the Heitler rezoning, is that correct?
Yeah, it's, the formal application has been in, so that's in that stage.
So we never want to limit people's opportunity to speak, and in fact, we've seen a letter from the folks I think that you might represent, or maybe from you, in fact, and that has become part of that public record. The quasi-judicial nature, our attorney can definitely talk to it more, but I would guess the advice from you is not to proceed with that. We don't ever stop folks from coming forward.
Right, and to be clear for those who may not have been down this road before, it is a function of how the City Council and the Planning Commission hear and consider cases like rezonings, which are considered, as opposed to legislative, what you're doing when you make laws on a typical night, a quasi-judicial matter, you're acting more like judges, evaluating an application specific to a piece of land or pieces of land, measuring the rules, the law, and applying it against the facts, and rendering a decision in much the same way a judge would. And the issue we have is not that anything these folks have to say won't be important or won't be considered. It's that the process needs to be open and fair to everyone involved. So if there's going to be a discussion, it needs to be posted as a discussion, and we do that through the public hearing process. So the problem is not that they have something to say, it's that not everybody's here to hear it or knew that there was going to be a discussion, so they'd be more than welcome to submit comments in writing or to come back for the second reading and public hearing on the rezoning case when that is scheduled, because that's when all the evidence will be presented that the council should consider.
Has there been a planning commission hearing yet? I don't believe so.
No, I don't believe there has been, no.
So then there's that opportunity as well.
That's right, that comes before the councils.
Are there guidelines to which things that, you know, I hate it when folks come out, and had I known ahead of time, I would have had the opportunity to chat with you. So we appreciate that you came out and made that effort, and I hate sending folks home without having that opportunity to speak. Is there a parameter to kind of what we could talk about? Content?
Boy, it's really difficult to say what they might have on their minds. I suspect there would be some expressions of opposition to the application, and again, without the applicant here to hear that and respond to it, that's the issue. And for the folks who are here to talk about that, what they need to understand is, I think even in this setting, without the applicant here, the risk is that if they say something that one or more of you finds persuasive, and you ultimately base your decision in part or in whole on that testimony, and that wasn't presented in the public hearing, which was posted and published for everyone to be here, or at the Planning Commission hearing, the risk is that the decision could be overturned because of a concern about due process. That's the risk, is that due process is not provided for everybody, and the hearing has to be done all over again, a great hassle and expense for everybody involved. So I'm hesitant to draw a line and say it's okay to talk about this issue or that issue. The fact of the matter is they have something to say about the application and they'd like to be heard, but the appropriate time to do that is in the posted public hearings.
Does that seem reasonable? And Mr. Montoya, if you want to come up and maybe have that dialogue with us, I mean, does that make sense?
It makes sense from a legal perspective.
Please come forward, if that's okay.
Mayor and council members, my name's Ron Montoya. I live at 1905 South Lake Road in Lakewood. I understand the legal perspective and what was just explained, but our concern is not so much the decision on the proposal that's going to be presented to you, but about the way we've been treated with Lakewood Planning.
Okay.
And I think that is the issue that we're very, very concerned about, in that we have communicated and absolutely are ignored by Lakewood Planning. Secondly, I think our biggest complaint is that we provided a package of letters from our HOA and from the surrounding HOAs to each of the council members, and they were intercepted, and we were told that we could not communicate with city council. Now, we vote for and elect city council, and it's our prerogative to communicate with city council. And I just don't see why it's inappropriate for us not to discuss these issues that we're having with Lakewood Planning. And we will put it in writing and we will send it in, but we feel like that we're not being heard. And so what difference does it make?
Well, it absolutely does make a difference, and I'm sorry you feel that way. We actually did receive that correspondence, and it wasn't intercepted, but in a quasi-judicial rezoning case, that is all submitted as one, so it becomes part of the record. And both bodies that would then see that come before them would have access to every piece of information that came in. So that is being kept as part of the record, and if you come all the way forward or the applicant comes all the way to us for a rezone, that would be part of everybody's packet and we would see all that correspondence. So I think it's safe to say if there are issues related to planning, we can definitely take and hear those, as long as we don't get into the merits of the case, the pros and the cons against.
Well, our concern basically is that as much as we've communicated, every meeting we've had with Lakewood Planning, the only answer we ever get is that they're going to ask for approval from City Council. I mean, no matter what we do, it's a deaf ear for what we're trying to, we don't understand if it's a done deal or what the situation is. We feel...
And it's not a done deal, and so it's interesting that I had this conversation offline today. But when it comes to a planning case or rezone case like this, planning staff, we have set forth criteria, and if a developer or somebody, the applicant who's looking, meets that criteria, that then moves forward. It really becomes then the decision of the Planning Commission to decide yes or no. If they decided no, it would end. If they said yes, then that comes to us. And so we are your body. You did elect us, and that's who we answer to in that case is you. Staff just looks and says, are the I's dotted, the T's crossed? And if so, if it meets this certain criteria, it then moves forward.
Well, we hope at the public meeting, when you take this issue up, that we have the opportunity to discuss some of the inequities that we feel are happening to our homeowners association and the people that are surrounding this development area. So.
One second, Mr. Cox.
Well, a couple of things, Mr. Mayor. One is, Mr. Montoya and the rest of your folks, we do have a brief article on the city's website that explains the reasoning behind quasi-judicial proceedings a little bit more. You seem to understand it anyway, but if anyone wants to read that, it is out there. But also, I think they certainly can say whatever they want about the process at the public hearing stage. If there's a concern about whether anything's being done according to the rules or with appropriate fairness, I would invite the group to send their concerns or call me with their concerns so we can figure out if there's something that needs to happen before that we get to the public hearing stage. Because again, our role is to protect the process, the integrity of the process, and keep it from being misused. If there's an issue that doesn't get addressed until it's too late, that could be a problem. So we can listen to what they have to say and see if we can work something out.
We appreciate that very much because I think we do have some issues that need to come to light.
Okay. Well, please call.
We'll certainly we'll start with that route if that's okay.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Yep. Mr. Wickman, did you have a comment?
Well, a question. As usual, I have no idea what's going on here. Is this related to the Rooney Valley annexation?
No, sir. It's regarding a
something
pending rezoning case.
Okay, never mind.
So with that said, I'm just going to read down some names and we'll see. That way everybody has a chance to speak if they'd like to. I have Mr. Meyer. You include Mr. Montoya. Ed Pyme, is that Permy? Okay. And is it Burrs? Bruins, Mr. Bruins. And then I have Mrs. Meyer. Okay. And then Karen. You with the same group? Okay. Is there anybody else that I didn't call who's with this group here? Okay. All right. So I thank you for coming out. Hopefully we can start down this road with Mr. Coxon. And again, anything that you write, we will all see and will become part of the record for our hearings. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Eady? Good evening, welcome.
Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the City Council, thank you for your time. I won't keep you very long, but I am representing a neighborhood. So there's three of my other neighbors here tonight, and maybe if I have an extra minute, that'd be, if that's cool with you.
We'll just let.
Well, I'll go quick. All right. So at the advice of Mr. Wickman and Barb Franks, so I came before you because I thought this was the next step to take. I've contacted the traffic engineering department about this little issue that I have in my neighborhood. And so I should know this because I'm on the planning commission, but the road was widened on Alameda recently, or it's in the process of widening. It's going from a 2 to a 4-lane highway, and it's kind of a piecemeal development right now. And I thought we would get some kind of notification about that, whether, about that development, because it's cutting right across the park and everything. We received no letter, and the traffic department said they're not required to post notification. So that's fine. So I asked if Lakewood would consider the following in their budget coming up here, and you're discussing it right now, I think, or maybe not tonight, but some other night. We would like very much if they could shovel some of the dirt and make a berm for us to buffer the parkland with the street. And it would mitigate some of the noise. The noise is traveling right downhill kind of funneled into our neighborhood. And it's getting really loud. It's, it's just kind of a concentration of noise, and would also bring some peace and quiet to the Forsberg Park area too. So I have no idea what I'm asking for here in terms of a earthenware structure or whatever, but since they're in the process of widening the road, maybe we could push some of that dirt and make a mound to buffer the park with the highway. So
You didn't even need all your 3 minutes.
I was trying to go.
You're
If
good.
I missed anything, maybe the other guys can fill in, because I've just said my little piece. But what I'm requesting basically is the council considers a budget item to cover some of the costs of this berm. Traffic told me it's not something we have to do, so therefore we're not going to do it. But it would sure bring a lot of peace and quiet to our neighborhood. I'm sorry, I'm Rob Ed, 14234 West Evans Circle.
We have you on the list. Thank
Yeah.
you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming out. Miss McAdie?
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Evening, welcome.
My name is Linda McAtee, 10396 West Dartmouth Avenue. In last week's study session, there was a review of city zoning policies in which certain topics were carved out for further discussion. I would like to see human population density added to that list and discussed in open forum. Certainly, human density issues deserves as much consideration as density of chickens and goats. It impacts a much greater segment of this city's population in quality of life issues like education, transportation, crime, and mental health. I think we should expose the motives for maintaining high-density areas in a suburban setting where so many of us settled to get away from that very thing. I would really encourage you to bring up this subject. for discussion before you vote on the zoning package. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Keith? Good evening, welcome.
Good evening. Council, thank you for giving me a couple minutes here. And I just want to echo Mr. Eady's sentiments on the berm on the Alameda Parkway. The noise has increased, and we've just moved there recently, but we can still tell the difference from all the construction. And I also think it's a safety factor for our kids who like to play in the park behind, just to have a separation from that highway. It's only going to get busier, and we would really like the council to consider this because it is having a profound impact on what we moved out into that suburb for. So we appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Mr. Lebersky? Good evening. Welcome. Thanks for coming out.
Good evening, City Council, Mr. Mayor. I too live along the Alameda Parkway, the development. We just recently moved there about 4 years ago at 14232 West Evans Circle. What we fell in love with was the open space behind our house, the Green Mountain area, all the open space, access to trails. It's such a beautiful park that the city built there, and the idea of a berm, I think, would maintain the beauty of the area as well as provide safety and a noise barrier. If you're ever out in that area, you'll see it's well used. The dog park that's there is well used, and so I just believe it would add to the beauty and the investment that the city has already put into it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. All right, that exhausts the roster of folks who've signed up. Anybody who did not have a chance to sign up and would like to speak? Okay, with that, I'll close public comment. Ms. McAtee, we have extended that conversation on some of those issues related to zoning until we have completion of our housing study, which I think will be a great opportunity to mix all that in and have that conversation as one. And that's kind of why we move that along further down the road, to have that with some of those results from the housing study to understand our densities and things like that. And appreciate you're not the first who've come and talked about a berm. We have a request in just a little bit down the road off Morrison Road as well. There's a lot of different moving parts to this. You know, this is the first opportunity, I think you mentioned the council members have heard, the first for us, and I think it's something we can reach out. We can use Mr. Eady as our conduit to get back and take a look and get a better understanding of that situation. Does that sound good? All right, thank you. Ms. Franks?
I just wanted to add that it might be appropriate. I mean, the west side of town has kind of got a unique topography, sound carries differently, and thought that it might be appropriate for, especially for us counselors on the west side of town, to kind of get some information to know when berms are effective, when they're not effective, what other types of things can. It just feels like that this is going to become a bigger and bigger issue, and without the proper amount of education, I don't seem to know where to direct people or how to, channel their concerns appropriately. And so I would love some more information over time that would help me do that more effectively.
Yes, thank you. We can do that.
Yes, and I'm certain we have a lot of that information. Yeah, good. Mr. Abel?
There was a comment about the lack of notification on road projects. That's the second I've heard in the past week or two. Apparently folks find it difficult to wake up one morning and find half the pavement gone in front of their house, and would like some notification of it. Is there any way we can cause the people doing the work to notify Are the agencies doing the work to notify the immediate neighborhood?
You know, I don't have the answer to that, but we will look into that.
Thank you.
And Mr. Abel, it is my understanding that if it is residential in nature, there are the notification processes where they'll go through and notify the actual neighborhoods. But on a street that I think where you don't have impacted residents, you may not have anybody to notice.
I believe there was, if I might respond,
Sorry.
if I might respond, there was a XL project going on over in near Yarrow and Yukon and Cedar Avenue down to First Avenue, and I believe those folks were caught by surprise when the truck showed up and started doing work. So, and I understand that's not us; it's XL, but I think we could work with those.
Certainly. I was surprised that XL didn't.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilman Abel. We both received that email. I actually did pass that on to Preston Gibson with Excel. I think he was going to look into it and see how the ball got dropped on that. I haven't heard back.
All right. Will the clerk please read the next item into the record?
The consent agenda consists of items 6 through 8 inclusive. Item 6, Ordinance 2016-14, amending Chapter 5.38 of the Lakewood Municipal Code to incorporate Chapters 5.39, 5.40, and 5.42 thereof, adding new sections 5.38.030, paren B, paren 6, and 5.38.160 thereto, and repealing chapters 5.39, 5.40, and 5.42. Item 7, approving the minutes of the regular city council meeting of October 10th, 2016. And item 8, accepting the minutes of the Advisory Commission for Inclusive Communities Executive Committee meeting of September 7th and their full commission meeting of August 17th, both 2016.
Thank you, Ms. Greer. And I'm just going to backtrack and just mention that the use of the consent agenda has been made to expedite council action. It contains both resolutions and first reading ordinances, which this is just an ordinance. First reading ordinances appear on the agenda only for the purpose of setting future public hearing dates and ordering the newspaper publication of the proposed ordinance. No public comments will be heard this evening on first reading. The public will have an opportunity to comment on the proposed ordinances during the scheduled public hearing on the date set forth tonight by the City Council. And on item 6, when we do have second reading, there will be a brief presentation by the clerk on that.
Mayor Paul, I move for approval of the council minutes for acceptance of the minutes of boards and commissions, order the ordinance introduced on first reading to be published in the Denver Post with public hearing set for the date included in the ordinance, all of which are included in the consent agenda items introduced into the record by the city clerk.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any conversation, comments? Please cast your votes. And the consent agenda passes 11 ayes, 0 nays. Will the clerk please read item 9?
Item 9, our second public hearing on ordinance O 2016-13, adopting a revised budget for the year 2016 for the city of Lakewood, Colorado, and further adopting the annual budget for the city for the fiscal year beginning on the first day of January 2017 and ending December 31st, 2017, estimating the amount of money necessary to be raised by levying taxes for the year 2016 to defray the cost of municipal government of the city of Lakewood, Colorado for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2017 and ending December 31st, 2017, and estimating the amount of money to be derived from other revenue sources, setting forth the appropriations for each fund.
Thank you. And we will start tonight with a presentation by Mr. Larry Dorr, our Finance Director and City Treasurer. Welcome back. I see you are sporting your CU Buffs tie.
eligible CU buffs, if I may say so. Thank you, Mayor Adam Paul and members of City Council. Once again, Larry Dorr, Lakewood Finance Director, and I'll have a short presentation tonight, and I did have one question from a council member. I'd like to address that in chambers, and then I'll be available for any questions, as will any other staff members here. And then the public, of course, would have a time to speak, and tonight is the night for the voting and adoption of the city budget. I don't want to forget that also the city's Lakewood Reinvestment Authority will have a meeting right after, and also its budget will be up for review and adoption and approval. Well, it's quite an auspicious occasion because we've been working on the budget process beginning here, in chambers over a month ago with Council's study session. Of course, Council's Budget and Audit Committee, which is 3 citizens as well as Council members Coop, Franks, and Gutwein, have studied the projections and all of the analysis that's gone into the budget. Of course, we've had the city's proposed annual budget online at lakewood.org since September 9th, and it's been there for public review, comment, and feedback. It's there in its entirety, about 530 pages of data and information presented in many different formats, and tonight is really the culmination of all of those activities. Our city charter does require that a budget be adopted for the ensuing fiscal year before November 1st, and so what Council has done is allowed for the greatest amount of time and input and participation and review of the budget before taking its action tonight. So this is also an opportunity for me in this presentation to do a couple of things. One, there may be those who will tune into this online at some point in the future, and it's their first and only interaction with the city's budget. So my comments won't be as long as things that we've done in the past, and I don't have any new information for council other than just the most recent financial statement, which we've closed and reviewed. But let me first just start for background for any bankers, creditors, citizens, whomever are out there listening, that most of my comments, all of my comments will be about the general fund tonight. And I'll start by talking just about the income to the city. In this national election that's occurring, people are thinking about their taxes and where their tax money goes, and some goes to Washington and the school district and the county. But some of the tax that we all pay comes to the city for the services provided in the community. And the largest source of revenue to the city of Lakewood is the sales and use tax that we pay when we purchase tangible goods within Lakewood borders. And the total sales tax is 7.5%. 3% of the 7.5% it goes to the city. And that's, as I mentioned before, about 2/3 of the income that the city uses to have police, parks, and public roads and transportation and so forth. Those are, obviously our real 3 core services to the community. And of course, you see here that also the state has a sales tax, as does Regional Transportation District, Scientific and Cultural Facilities, and the county open space. Also, property owners in the community have, as a part of their property tax bill, an assessment from the city as well. Relatively speaking, it is small, and I've got an example here from a $300,000 single-family home residence in the community. The total bill you see here and how it's broken down between the schools, the county, the fire district, and then the city. So it's those two things that come together. And you saw on the previous slide that the city's income from sales tax is about 2/3 and about 6 or 7% from property tax. So quite a bit smaller there. The Lakewood economy is really doing well. It's very robust. I want to say that loudly to all of the city's, again, bankers, creditors, financial partners out there. If you look at what's going on in commercial office, in residential, multifamily, single-family residential, if you look at retail, convenience stores across the entire gamut of investment, core jobs and everything in between, you see that Lakewood has a very strong economy. And this is a 65-year-old company in the city, headquartered since 1960, First Bank of Colorado with its new headquarters. They'll be here for another generation of workers and managers and share owners. This is the building a year ago. We have a very substantial investment that happened over at Belmar with the Hyatt House Hotel, and I could repeat this. I forgot to mention hotels when I was talking about the segments there. There's so many and such a diversity of investments. Of course, we're a service organization, and I say this substantially to the citizens that are watching who may work for manufacturing companies or retailers or whatnot. Our assets as a business are our people. We provide services through our police agents, through our snowplow drivers and our planners and everything in between. Of course, our accountants as well. And so we spend 74 cents of every dollar on operating personnel and 25 cents of every dollar on the services that those workers need to get the job done: asphalt, gasoline, whatever the case may be. So that's a little bit of background on the community and how we derive our income to provide services for the public. And then let me get to some of the spending initiatives for 2007 that are in this proposed budget that you'll be voting on tonight. I beg your pardon, 2017. Yes, I beg your pardon. Thank you. First, in the area of our police department, we have proposed in this budget implementation of smartphones for our police officers that will enable them to fight crime more efficiently, more effectively, and really have the technology necessary for them to do what other police agencies are doing. We're adding to our police force as well. Last year, 10 police agents and 2 community service officers, and we've got them in the academy now. We're also, this proposed budget would add another 8 police officers to our 2017 police academies. We're also proposing replacement of the mobile data computers that are in the police squad cars and in the detective cars. That's what's happening in the police department. In community resources, our theme for 2017 spending is in the area of parks and facilities, and we have already completed playground replacements at Green Gables, Westgate, Bonfils, Ritchie Parks, but we have more replacements coming. We also have a substantial remodel underway at the Lakewood Link Recreation Center, and we have proposed in here park path replacements, median renovations, and some renovations to our public safety center, restrooms and locker rooms and so forth over in the public safety center. I mentioned the medians that will be addressed in community resources proposals in the budget, and those medians are along Colfax, Pierce, Wadsworth, Bear Creek Boulevard, Kipling, and Jewel. And then in the area of parks themselves, we have a renovation underway at Carmody Park, but also proposed in this budget is a substantial renovation at Lasley Park, an acquisition at Sunset Park, and then a replacement of the amphitheater here at Belmar Park. So as you know, but is a little unusual, our Community Resources Department is not just responsible for parks, recreation, and golf, but those building maintenance items that I mentioned, like happening over at the Public Safety Center and in our medians. And then in Public Works, our theme for 2007 proposals is related to transportation and infrastructure, and we have planned traffic signals, additional traffic, intersections, bikeway improvements, and sidewalk improvements. And I should say for the public, if you want to go back and learn more detail about this beyond what's just in the book, if you go back to Council's study session on September 19th, you'll see excellent details from our directors of Public Works, Community Resources, and our police chief outline all of these in much greater detail if you have more interest in that. Also, our Chief Information Officer, Mark Prey, talked a little bit about information technology, and our theme is really focusing on core systems. Now, our IT department, of course, needs to partner with our police department on smartphones and the mobile data computers and things like that. But in addition, IT has its own business, and that's managing and protecting the storage and security and overall systems of the city. We have underway at the moment a replacement of our court administration system, and also this budget proposes to evaluate the effectiveness of our financial management and HR systems as well, so that we can make sure that they're up to snuff and doing what's needed to get the job done. We have two other areas here, and that is as a service organization, one of the things interesting to the public, and that's always a very important part of the proposed budget, is employee compensation. And we want to remain a competitive and attractive employer to all of our workers so that we can continue to have efficient succession and effective delivery of service and good institutional knowledge across the culture of those 900 regular full-time workers. And then probably the most technical of all of these that's not as obvious that we have on here is also our risk management reserves. We've had some settlements and had some loss experiences in the community, and it's time for us to address that through some transfers of reserves. So that's at a real high level, what's going on at 2017 spending. And for more detail, of course, you can look back at some of the earlier videos and minutes of those meetings. I've got a 5-year breakout here of the general fund, both revenues, expenses, and also the city is subject to the Colorado Constitutional Tabor Amendment, which limits the city's revenues. I should say that revenues are continuing on just as they have since my last report to you. We will exceed the limit based on what we're seeing, so we need to make that a part of our forecast and make a good disclosure. But you can see that we're proceeding to use some of the city's reserves in this very strong economy to take care of some very important and useful projects. And I've got the dollar amounts attached here for those in the audience. There are a couple that I didn't mention. We have added in this proposed budget additional funding for a slash facility, and our staff is still working out the details of what that looks like, what it will provide exactly, and what level of service. I mentioned Sunset Park and some of the things that IT is doing around fiber optic connectivity. I mentioned Safety Center, IT facilities. I mentioned some of the transportation things happening, Park Path and Trail, general building maintenance, amphitheater, and those last couple of items. You can see what those add up to and how they impact the budget overall with the dollars attached. Well, in closing, let me just say that each year the budget is always a challenge. There's so many moving parts, and I just want to thank council for your engagement in the process and great questions and direction to us to provide this budget for you. But all of it is guided by your community values, your core community values. Everything that we do in the budget, everything we spend money on, should be connected to these core values. That's our purpose, and it's worth repeating. And with that, let me just close by saying that once again, we will submit the city's budget document for a peer review. And we'll submit that to the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada. It's a very old and venerable organization. Their criteria is very stiff. The purpose of this isn't to check on our decisions. The purpose of this isn't to check on your vote as a council. The purpose of this is to make sure that you've been thorough, clear, open, and transparent in your communications, and you've been thorough. And that is probably more important than those individual decisions, is that you've been fair in the process and been open with the public. And so we'll expect to receive that award. I think we've met all the criteria. And only about 30 cities in the state of Colorado of 200 or more will receive this award. So it's very distinguished. And it's a chance for me to also thank all of the people that contribute to this process, in addition to mayor and council, but all of the staff that contributes to what finance does, really facilitating the budget. And so thank you to all of those good people. So that, Mayor, I think it's an opportunity for the public to speak. I do have a question and answer I can address, so I think I'll just have a seat and listen, and we'll go from there. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. And before I open the public hearing, just want to reemphasize that this is the second public hearing, the first being on October 10th. And I do believe we had a study session public comment period both before and after on September 19th. So with that, I will open the public hearing on the proposed budget. Nobody's signed up. Anybody wish to speak on the budget? Seeing none, I'll close public comment and turn it back over to Mr. Dorr to answer the first question he had.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, throughout the whole process, of course, the council will call, write, and so forth, questions, and we'll try to address those in front of the public and all the folks here. Councilman Dave Wickman sent an email to me earlier today about, I'll just read it. It says, how much would one of those radar trailers cost, and to whose budget would that go into? And I had to educate myself just a little bit on this, but we're talking about these. It's a sign that's attached to, effectively a sign that's attached to a trailer that's mobile, and they're parked throughout the community. And as you drive by it, it's a bit of a traffic enforcement. The sign reads your speed as you're driving and flashes that to you and so forth. And first, let me address that. The city is no longer using the mobile signs because the technology's improved. We're able to get the person's speed on the much smaller signs now, number one. Number two, the trailer can present some complexity. It takes up a lot of space. It can block sidewalks. People aren't that thrilled with it. So some years ago, the city moved away from that and went to the pole-mounted signs. We have 13 of those around the community now. And we do have a process that's been instituted by council via resolution where those can be contemplated and installed and evaluated for service. And generally speaking, they're about $10,000. To get to the bottom line. It's a sign that faces both ways and so forth. And so that was the only question, Mayor, that I had. I hope that was thorough coming from the finance office. Anyway, it gives you a little bit of a feel for that, but we can talk about it further as it relates to traffic and so forth if needed. Sir?
Thank you. And so I'm lighting up a little bit, and before we go further, I'm going to ask for a motion to get this set in motion, and then we can go to questions and comments.
Mayor Paul, I move for the adoption of Ordinance O 2016-13.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second, and I will go to Mayor Pro Tem Johnson first.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Larry. This is a very important document. It's basically a public policy document. It gives us direction. And during the study session, there was some robust comments regarding eminent domain and land acquisition. Those are two issues that to me are very important. I'd like to say that our city manager, Kathy Hodson, and staff were very kind to work with me, and Tim Cox. And we've put together some language that helps to address those issues and the seriousness that the city takes regarding the use of that tool. Did you want me to read it now? Okay. I have a motion, and let me just read this to you. It regards the language of eminent domain in our budget. The power of the city to acquire private property for public use in exchange for payment of just compensation. This authority originates in the United States Constitution and is conferred upon cities and towns by state law and upon Lakewood by the Home Rule Charter. It is the policy of the city of Lakewood to view eminent domain as an infrequent and extraordinary remedy. Those are important words. To be utilized only after reasonable attempts at negotiation have failed, and only in strict accordance with all required procedures. I want to thank staff. Since this is legal language, I assume that Tim probably had a hand in this. Thank you. Shakti last year called this document a moral document, and that has stuck with me. I think that this language helps to support that. And council, I'm asking for your support of this amendment. And with that, I move that we have this amendment as part of our budget. Thank you.
Mayor, I second that.
All right, we
Jinx.
have 2 seconds.
Good.
Maybe
You have a third? Yeah.
All right, so this is the First Amendment, which would incorporate this language. Would this go on any acquisition page, or where would this be in the document?
The intent was to put the definition, have it added to the glossary that begins on page 524. So it covers any such incidences.
All right, so there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, please cast your votes. And that passes 11 ayes, 0 nays. Nice job.
Thank you, council. Appreciate your support.
Okay, so I have lined up to speak Councillor Wickman, Coop, Abel, and Gutwein. Councillor Wickman?
Would you mind putting up that slide that listed the general fund, revenue, expenses, reserves?
Stop me when I get there. I think that's it.
Sorry. It went by real fast. It looked like the numbers were a little different, so I was just comparing. Okay. Now, my question. I know we asked before, and I'll just follow up. In light of the need to do some...
Councillor Wickman, is your mic on? Or could you hold?
Might not.
All right.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. Questions regarding berms and other noise control. I think when I asked you about that originally, we were talking about 50 to 150,000. Do we want to fine tune those numbers any? Is it still the number we're looking at?
I haven't done any additional work on the ranges. I think we need to evaluate what the impacts would be. I think Councilwoman Franks described it as understanding what mitigation can be provided, how many are needed across the community, and a more thorough review. So staff has not done any additional work on that.
Okay. Well, this is my proposal. The work is going on right now. Not only is there Rooney Valley got a large population and it's growing, but we're talking about an annexation coming on. We're looking about an awful lot of people coming in off Rooney Valley. The work is going on right now, so it seems to me it'd be more effective to try to do whatever mitigation controls now rather than figuring it out later. Now, again, I'm not going to micromanage and say build a berm, build a wall, whatever. I don't know. But I would like to show our dedication to the problem by putting I don't know what you call a place marker or whatever. Let's allocate some funds, and then you can work out the details of how it's to be utilized. I think it would need to be a revision to the 2016 in order that you could have access to it now while construction is going on. Would that be appropriate, 2016 revision as opposed to 2017 budget?
Well, technically speaking, in order to make funds available during the 2016 calendar, that would be correct technically. But Mayor, would you care to describe across the council if this is something that we want to explore further? Or?
Thank you, Mr. Dorr. So definitely I appreciate that, Councilor Wickman, a policy question indeed. One that I'm not even familiar enough with the process as to know what is going in, and to Councilmember Franks, when you are on an elevated portion, does a berm just push that noise further up, and then if you're going down, shoot the noise downhill? I don't have any of that information. I think it would be wise to have us get that kind of information from our Public Works, what's going on in the plan, and then we can always come back with a supplemental as a council body if there's something that needs to be done, or there could be money that's found in that budget already to make it happen. Ms. Hodson?
I would say the same thing. So what we can do is come back to you with options and talk about effectiveness when the issue that we're trying to resolve is noise and safety and those kind of things that we heard this evening. What we can do is look at that and give you some options, whether it's a berm, a wall, or whatever that might be, especially to Councilor Frank's point about the unique topography in certain parts of town. And we can always do a special amendment, and you can do that at any time. You don't just have to do that at budget time. You can do a special allocation if you as a group find that as a necessary purchase.
And I would also mention that this is something that's of great interest not only on Alameda, but, you know, there's been folks on 6th Avenue that have been wanting an extension of sound walls for some time. So it might even be worth setting an actual policy like we have for undergrounding utilities or something along those lines, that we're looking at doing this sort of thing holistically and not just piecemealing it. But the floor is yours again, Mr. Wickman.
Again, I come back to, if we study this, you know, I don't know, you know, when we're going to get to this. The construction's going on now. The need is now. So, like I said, I've promised that I would make a case for putting it in the budget. So like I said, I would make a motion to either put it in the 2017 budget or the 26 revised, whatever you think is more appropriate.
So Councilor Wickman, my understanding is that that is really for you to decide with a dollar amount.
Okay, you said between 50 to 150. Let's put it in the middle and say 100.
Okay, I'll second it.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there anybody who'd like to speak to that motion? And I have Council President Shakti.
Clearly, we've been hearing more about berms in different parts of the city recently. I feel like it's important that we not each argue for the berm in our ward, and that instead staff has a process for figuring out where it's most cost effective and where there's the biggest need and how it makes sense for us to move forward. So I think putting a little extra time into thinking about this before we move forward makes sense.
And I would speak to that as well. I agree. We just had a gentleman on Morrison Road come in and kind of told him that, gave him a range of options and didn't commit money to that project. So I think we need to tread lightly. And again, I think a better idea would be if we should set a policy and start putting money every year towards this rather than just throwing that out. So I will not support the motion. Anybody else wish to speak to the motion? Ms. Franks?
As a project manager, while normally I do like to always look for efficiencies, I think this happens to be the one case where the efficiency should have been thought about before the project was initiated. And so I would like to see some type of a broader policy which bakes in this type of a noise impact analysis into projects which have the potential for that. That way we can gain that efficiency for all future projects. The problem I do have now is we have several people who've come forward with noise related issues all across Ward 4, and to pick this one, while it's heartbreaking, I certainly appreciate the issue. We've gotten so many noise complaints that I do think we need to come back with a policy, and then we need to bake this into every project for which there is a noise impact. That could be everything from, I've got folks who live next to a recreation center and there's noise from pickleball courts. I've got folks for its modified vehicles. I've got other folks where it's, you know, just the increase of traffic. And so noise is really going to become a bigger and bigger issue. And in our community, many people moved here for the serenity, and I think we need to take that into account, that there's a reason why we're such an amazing place to be and why people want to come here. But if we erode the very thing that brought them here, we're really doing a disservice to all of our long-term citizens who've invested over decades into the community, and we're starting to drive some of them out because it has changed. So I really, unfortunately, won't be supporting this particular one, maybe the setting aside of money, but maybe not for a specific project, but in order for us to then get a better handle on this and start looking at noise and quality of life issues more holistically, more consistently, rather than always just after the fact coming in and trying to clean up the mess once it's been made. Thank you.
Ms. Gutwein to the motion.
Yes, thank you. I also will not be supporting that motion, and kind of building off what Barb says, just to speak to the broad number of people that we hear this from. I know in Ward 5 we also have Wadsworth, and we have a number of communities that are concerned about the sound. We even had one HOA, Marston Slopes, fund and build their own wall, which I think was very expensive, but also impressive way to handle it. So I like the idea of doing a broad-based policy. I don't want to have some neighborhoods have been given that advantage without it being available to all of them. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson to the motion.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. Barb, you're very articulate, and I appreciate your thoughts on this. I guess my curiosity is, since there's already land being moved, in this particular situation, would it just be cheaper to go ahead and address this one now, since there's already so many folks that have stepped forward and the need is now? I kind of wonder if it's cheaper. That's my thought.
Mayor Pro Tem, if I may add, we don't know what we don't know. And so we don't know if a berm is going to help or hurt. We don't have any of that kind of studies. And I think it's clear that if this council gets that kind of information, we can come back. And again, the savings might be found within the project, and there may not need to be money. Ms. Hodson?
There's something called a noise expert, and we can consult. We don't know if a berm is the actual right solution as well. So we'll do some further work. I recommend that, and that we'll come back and let you know what those options are, and that'll be applied to the entire city, regardless of topography. But some of the city has issues with noise around light rail. And down south, there are some things we've heard about, concerns on 6th Avenue, on Morrison, et cetera. So we can look at this broadly with a noise expert to tell us what our options might be and associated costs.
Thank you, Ms. Hodson. So there's a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. Okay, clear votes. Please cast your votes. And that motion fails. 1 aye, 10 nays. The nays being Paul, Vincent, Roybal, Harrison, Johnson, Shakti, Abel, Coop, Franks, and Gutwein. So I still have on my list, I have Councilor Coop, Councilor Abel, and Councilor Gutwein. Councilor Coop.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is about Sunset Park acquisition, and I don't know if that is you, Mr. Dorr, or Ms. Newland. The question is, I'm at one point in time there was discussion of 2 different parcels next to Sunset Park, and I have not been able to find which parcel this is pertaining to.
Kit Newland, Community Resources Director, will respond.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Councilor Coop, it's the piece of property that's on the western side of Sunset Park.
Across the street from Bellows Park?
Exactly, right along Oak.
Okay, so this is going to be an actual Lakewood acquisition to own that land?
Correct.
Does that mean there's going to be opportunity for that bike path that comes through Bellows Park
That's the hope.
alleviate that problem of people having to cross that street?
That's the
Very
goal.
dangerous street.
Yes, yeah.
Super.
Yes.
Appreciate it, thank you.
While you're here, Councilor Abel, did you have a question for? No, I just thought while she was up here, I thought you had this question on the park as well. Okay. Sorry. Thank you very much. Mr. Coop, was that your only question?
Yes, it is.
All right. Councilor Abel.
I'd like to, since Councilman Coop brought that up, I'd like to mention that the acquisition of this part of Sunset Park offers us a number of options for connections of bicycle and pedestrian paths in that entire area, possibly going as far out as Daniels Park with if things work out. Secondly, I'd like to address the budget document as a whole. The narrative and illustrations in the capital improvements make it a lot more of a living document, something that's easy to see and digest, and frankly plan for future projects. It really puts them into perspective, and I appreciate the effort and time that went into that.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions? All right. We have a Motion and a second, and we need to kind of redo that motion, right, as amended, or does that just flow into it, Mr. Cox?
The motion is now to approve the budget as amended by the first motion of the evening.
Okay. So we'll get to that in a quick second. I did actually have one question. Mr. Dorr, we are looking at refunding 4.5 million roughly, and it looks like our property tax bill's $48-ish. We don't have a sense of how much that's going to lower through this refund?
Thank you.
On a $300,000 property?
Thank you. The number that I presented earlier is inclusive of last year's refund, which was 5.2 million. So typically the property tax bill for a homeowner would be a little over $100, right around in that range. And it's been reduced for the prior year's refund to that smaller number, and it will stay at about that number through the adoption of this.
Perfect. So that'll hold steady because it's already seen that reduction.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Councilor Franks.
Thanks, Mayor Paul. I wanted to take the opportunity to make sure I understood the process for kind of our noise kind of strategy. So it sounds like to me, Kathy Hodgson, that we're going to be doing getting with maybe a noise expert, and then we're going to be getting some information which would help us understand what are the mitigations, where are they best suited in that. Would then the next step be for either maybe Councilor Wickman or myself or someone else here to put that on a request for a study session item? I'm just trying to make sure that people who are listening and in the audience understand kind of what maybe that process looks like and what action we might need to take in order to get this moving forward, since we know it's such a large concern.
Thank you, Councilor Franks. As a matter of fact, I was going to ask for that clarification as well. If you as a council are directing us to move forward and to start working on what I'm thinking about is something like an education first. What are those options? We would talk to a noise expert and have them do some work and then come to you during a study session with those components and education and then costs therein. And where something might be effective and where it might not be. So kind of a broad conversation and education, and then you can direct staff from that point. If there are some associated costs, then we'll schedule that for a regular meeting and do that appropriately.
Do we have a list or a way to get a list of the most commonly complained about, so we have kind of a focus point for maybe our prioritized list of where we're seeing the biggest issues, where we've had the most contacts from constituents, something of that nature?
Yes, we actually have good record of communication with our citizens, and we can have that as well as a part of the broader conversation, with just more data for you to have as you're making your decisions.
So just for clarification, does that sound cool with council to go that route? I'm getting a consensus, yeah, so we will go that route. You're very welcome. Councilor Gutwein.
Thank you. I wanted to comment on the process as a whole, and just thank everyone in the budget team and Director Dorr and the entire budget team for the tremendous amount of work that has gone into this process, and that I feel really proud after the many hours that we've all spent looking through this document of just the very responsible way that the city of Lakewood handles the taxpayers' dollars and manages to also provide a high level of service. And also, even though we're financially conservative, we also managed to make progress. And I think a favorite example of mine is the award-winning Sustainable Neighborhoods program, which has received worldwide recognition. So I think we should all feel proud of this document. I certainly am. And thank you for all the work that has gone into it over the year. And thank you.
Well said. And I want to... First, I want to echo that for sure. I want to thank this body up here and congratulate you on, for some, your first budget. And there's a lot of information, and you all worked really hard and asked a lot of great questions and really made this a great document. So I hope it goes forward and passes. And secondly, to the staff who year after year just does a wonderful job. Mr. Dorr, you have a whole team of budget folks from all the departments who work hard. And what's exciting to see is the numbers at 10 straight years of adding to the reserves. and we've still given $11 million back to the taxpayer since 2014. Our fund balance in 2005 was 8.8 million, and now we're sitting at about 42 million. So it goes a long way to say that we actually, and we take to heart whose money we are spending and allocating, and we try to do it in a smart manner. And I'm thrilled that our police will no longer have flip phones, and will actually have a smartphone, which means Counselor Abel's going to have to get a smartphone now because he might be the only one left with a flip phone. So
I'm holding out.
But thank you again, and I've heard from other folks as well who've had the opportunity to look at this document and the budget in brief and really appreciate it. Not only is it numbers, but it really drills down into the why and the who and the how and the reasons behind the spending in this community. So I'm excited to support this, my first budget to support as mayor with this great council, and I will ask for a vote. Nope. I think he said we are good as amended. And that motion passes, 11 ayes, 0 nays. So thank you. Congratulations to staff. Thank you very much. Okay, general business. So we're going to let our staff folks go ahead and go and enjoy the Bronco game, but don't tell us.
Don't text.
Don't. Counselor Abel, I'm plugging my ears. Okay. So we have a unique request under general business, and I'd be more than happy to explain that, Ms. Hodson, if you'd like me to. So as you heard last week, there was a update that more info was to come about hiring our new police chief. We have an interim police chief. And so there's been a request made, and it'll be up to council to have a motion for executive session. And this would be particularly just to talk about that process. There'll be no votes taken, and we would come back and finish the meeting. So if you want to elaborate on that at all, Ms. Hodson.
That's it, to report to council on the status of negotiations in the search for a new police chief. As you just said, there will be no action by you, council, and the intent is for a very brief report to you.
Thank you. So with that, I'll request a motion.
I move to go into executive session pursuant to Section 2.15C2 of the Lakewood Home Rule Charter and Section 24-64024E of the Colorado Revised Statutes to determine a position relative to issues subject to negotiation, receive reports on the progress and status of negotiations, and specifically to receive a report from the city manager on the status of negotiations for the vacant police chief position.
Second.
Right, I have a motion and a second. Discussion, Mr. Wickman.
Yes. Why the timing of this? Why can't we finish the regular meeting, and then when the meeting's all done and everybody's leaving naturally, then do your executive session? If you make everybody leave now, they're going to want to come back.
Well, thank you for that. We actually discussed that, sir, and we actually have another meeting after this. So because this will be brief, and I think maybe in some of the boards you've served on prior, it is a function to go in, and we'll come back down, finish the meeting, and proceed with the LRA meeting.
He's still not answering. Why does it have to be done now rather than at the end?
Certainly, if you don't feel like going in, then you can certainly vote no. Any other discussion? Please cast your votes. And that motion carries 9 aye, 2 no, the noes being Wickman and Coop. So we will recess this meeting temporarily, and we will come back to finish the meeting, and it shouldn't be very long, and then we'll go into our LRA meeting. So I call this on hold at 8:25 p.m.
That light in his eyes that no other eyes reveal. Although he may be late, I'll trust in fate, and so I wait for my ideal. For my I'm so in love with you, please love me, love me. Whatever else you do, just love me, love me. Go your way, dance and play till dawn breaks through. If you'll just call up and say I love you, love you. You're all that I desire. Love me, love me. I'd die if you should tire of me. Love me. I'll be kind and I won't mind if you're not near. If you only love me, dear. You're all that I desire. Love me, love me. I'd die if you should tire of me. Love me. I'll be kind and I won't mind if you're not near. If you'll only love me, dear.
I'm a fool to care when you say I know I love you, but what can I do? I'm a fool to care. I'm a fool to cry when you tell me goodbye. You left me so blue when you were untrue. I'm a fool to care. I know I should lie. I'd ought to call it a day, but I know I would cry if you went away. I'm a fool should I pretend I'll lose in the end? I'm a fool to care. I know I should laugh, I'd ought to call it a day, but I know I would cry if you went away. I'm a fool to care when you don't care for me. So why should I pretend I'm gonna lose in the end? I'm a fool to care. Such a fool to care.
Good evening. I call back to order the regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Lakewood. Everybody is present. Do we need to do a roll call?
Mic on?
Yeah, I'm on. Maybe you can't hear me. Jeez. Okay. All right, we're back. And everybody is here, so we'll pick up where we left off, which was general business and executive report. Anything, Ms. Hodson?
No, sir, no report.
Mr. Cox?
We hadn't talked about when we're going to do that. I'm sorry. There's a little bit space there. We did have a couple of questions that we wanted to address. Councilor Wickman brought them to our attention before the last study session, and there were two items mentioned. One is with regard to the issue of term limits. What Mr. Wickman did that night is gave me a copy of a district court decision from 2005, I think it is. One of the only cases that's interpreting the term limits provisions in the Constitution and how they fit in under Colorado law. We did have that decision. We were aware of it. I've spoken to one of the attorneys who worked on that case, who's considered one of the experts in the elections field generally. We're still gathering information. We don't have a firm recommendation at this point. We're still collecting some information and doing some of the research and talking to that outside attorney before we can present you with a recommendation, probably in writing at some point. The second item was the question of whether a person could run for elected office, in this case, city council, and not receive the compensation provided for in the city's regulations. And it's not an issue that I've found an answer to or that's ever been asked in any official capacity. There's no reported decisions that we could find on that note. What I can tell you is that we have two provisions. One's in the charter and one's in the municipal code. And the charter says the members of the city council shall receive compensation in the amount to be set by ordinance, and goes on to talk a little bit about that. The code has that ordinance adopted at one point in time saying council members shall receive this amount in 12 equal payments. The mayor shall receive that amount in 12 equal payments. So it's mandatory that the money be received according to our regulations, according to a strict reading of the regulations. It says that you shall receive it. What is done with that money after you receive it is entirely within the hands of the individuals. So I don't know the situation that you're referring to, whether it's a prospective candidate, but that's what our rules say, is that it doesn't say the city shall pay or the city shall set. It says the council members shall receive. And it says it in a couple of different places. And so as it's currently construed, I'd say anybody serving in the city council must receive the funds designated. And that's all we have to go on at this point.
All right, well, let me clarify. When I got that question, my response was do like I do and just give it away.
Right.
But they have tax considerations.
Mhm.
So if they refuse to cash the check with IRS, would that considered receiving the money, or the fact that our ordinance says we received the money, would they have to report it on their taxes?
That was part of our consideration in case there was a situation like that. I think the city has an obligation to make sure that the money is paid and received. What they have to do to satisfy the IRS at that point, we're not equipped or in the right position to opine on that, I'm afraid.
Okay, I did the best.
That would be up to the individual to consult with a tax professional and.
Well, and the
get some
city would
advice on
have to
that.
do a W-2, I mean, regardless, so.
Yeah, right, the money would go out and be out of our hands.
All right, well, thank you. Council reports, I'll be brief. I have a walk and talk coming up on the 26th, this Wednesday, and we'll be meeting over at Westfax about 5:15, and we're going to hit the kind of the northern part of the proposed arts loop, and it's dog friendly, so if you got a pup, go ahead and feel free to bring them. Ballots are out. Vote, vote, vote. You can only do it once, but talked to a lot of folks about that, and that's all that I have. Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
No report.
Council President Shakti,
No report.
Councilor Gutwein,
No report.
Councilor Franks, Councilor Coop, Councilor Abel,
No report.
Councilor Harrison,
No report.
Councilor Royball,
No report.
Councilor Vincent,
No report.
Councilor Wickman.
Well, I don't know if I put this as a report or a question. The annexation that we're being considered. This putting us in, there's a rezoning element. I was going to ask you earlier when everybody was here, are we into an official, quasi-judicial, where are we at with all that?
You're referring to the case that's in the Rooney Valley?
Yes.
We can certainly talk more about this as we get closer to the process because it doesn't come up very often. You have a rezoning from time to time. Even less frequently, you have an annexation. But the annexation and the zoning usually go hand in hand because under state law, any property that's annexed into a city has to be zoned in the city within 90 days. So rather than do one and then do the other and try to work the timing out, most applicants submit the annexation and zoning requests or applications at the same time. The tricky part with all of this when it comes to your roles is zonings, as you know, rezonings are considered quasi-judicial, and that's where we have the problem that was discussed tonight. Annexations are considered legislative.
There you go.
So technically, we tell planning commissions and we tell city council. The annexation part, theoretically, you can discuss as you would any other legislative matter. It's the integration of that land into the city, which is the annexation, and that's a different decision from the rezoning. You can't talk about the rezoning for the same reasons we discussed tonight. And yes, there is a pending application in that case that you're referring to. It's not what they were here for, but that is a pending application. And so our ultimate advice is if you can find a way to talk about the annexation that doesn't compromise the zoning part of it, more power to you. It's very, very difficult to say I support or I oppose this annexation because without referring to the uses that are proposed, which is the zoning side of it. So the law hasn't really helped us out on how to make that distinction. We just say tread carefully, avoid any discussion of the rezoning, and if you can talk about the annexation in a vacuum, you are free to do that.
And it is official at this point.
That's my understanding. Yeah, Travis not here, but yes, it's in the pipeline.
Thank you.
All right, anything else for the good of the order? With that, I'll adjourn this meeting, and I will call to order the Lakewood Reinvestment Authority special meeting of Lakewood, Colorado, October 24th, 2016 at 8 p.m. And we'll call, ask for roll call, sorry.
Paul? Wickman? Vincent?
Here.
Royball?
Here.
Harrison? Here. Johnson?
Here.
Shakti?
Here.
Abel?
Here.
Coop? Franks?
Here.
Gutwein?
Here.
Do you have a quorum?
Thank you very much. I'll now open the public comment portion. There's been a roster, seeing nobody in chambers. I will close public comment, and I will proceed to the consent agenda.
The consent agenda consists of item 4 through 6 inclusive. Item 4, Resolution LRA 2016-2, designating the public place for posting notices of public meetings of the Lakewood Reinvestment Authority during 2016 and 2017 pursuant to CRS 24-6-40. Item 5, Resolution LRA 2016-3, a resolution amending the Lakewood Reinvestment Authority bylaws to designate the Deputy City Manager as the Secretary Executive Director of the Lakewood Reinvestment Authority. And item 6, approving the minutes of the Lakewood Reinvestment Authority meeting of July 11th, 2016.
All right, motion.
Chairman Paul, I move for approval of the Lakewood Reinvestment Authority minutes and for adoption of Resolution LRA 2016-2 and LRA 2016-3, all of which are included in the consent agenda items introduced into the record by the city clerk.
Second.
All right, motion and second. Please cast your votes. And that motion carries 11 ayes, 0 nays. Now I'd like to invite our Executive Director, Ms. Nanette Nealon. Good evening.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the LRA. Tonight I'm going to give you an overview of what is contained in the LRA budget for 2016 recommended and then also 2017.
Excuse me, Mayor, did you want me to read that into the record first?
Yeah.
Item 7, resolution, public hearing for LRA 2016-4, authorizing a revised budget for the year 2016 for the Lakewood Reinvestment Authority and further adopting the annual budget for the Lakewood Reinvestment Authority for the fiscal year beginning on the first day of January 2017 and ending on December 31st, 2017, estimating the amount of money to be derived from tax increment financing and setting forth the appropriations for each fund.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm just going to quickly go over. You have 3 areas that are in consideration of the budget. One is the West Alameda Corridor, and later the Belmar was brought into the West Alameda Corridor. We still financially keep those 2 separate, but they are one combined area. Well, the West Colfax Corridor is our second area, and Colfax Wadsworth is the third area in our budget documents. To reflect back on the 2015 actuals, you get a sense of where our fund balance is, what I really focus on, since most of our money is passed through and paying off some obligations. So we have about $8 million in revenue that came in. We have about $6.6 million, and we added about $1.4 million into the fund balance. That's primarily in the Alameda Corridor area. So in 2015, we had about $4.55 million in our fund balance. And then in 2016, in our revised budget, we are starting to expend funds, as we indicated in a meeting last year, of identifying activities, particularly in the Alameda Corridor and some in the West Colfax. We've started some of the kind of the homework that is needed to bring projects or activities forward to you. But we have an ending fund balance of about $4.1 million projected at the end of this year. What we accomplished in 2016 is the Lamar Station Plaza improvements. Those were enhancements at what we call 6601 West Colfax Avenue, Lamar Station Plaza. It included streetscape, wayfinding, and pedestrian improvements on the property itself. And then we're doing some intersection improvements and utility improvements. Showing you some after pictures. We're wrapping up the contract as we speak right now. Shown are the landscape and the median improvements in the parking lot, the plaza that's been used. It was utilized during the Mural Fest. And then on the right-hand side of the screen is the future incorporation of the art walk that will bisect Lamar Station Plaza and creating an activity area. Those 2 public areas will eventually become into an easement for public purposes, so we always keep the public use in perpetuity, with Broad Street being responsible for the maintenance. In the 2017 budget, our revenues stay about the same. It's about $8.9 million. Our expenditures went up, and expenditures went up to $12.5 million, which brings down the fund balance. We're bringing the fund balance down and expending that fund balance on improvements in the Alameda Corridor and the West Colfax Corridor, which we're required to do to utilize the funds, and we've identified always that in the plan. So our projections at the end of the 2017 budget will bring the fund balance down to about $668,000. To kind of go over the projected revenue, where does the money come from? The sales tax increment is primarily a pass-through, and it happens on the Colfax Wadsworth project. The rest of our money comes in through property tax increment. That's the additional increment above and beyond that was originally collected on the property tax from the parcels within those areas. And then we have some investment income that amounts to less than 1%. But the expenditures are primarily less than 1% on personnel. Services and supplies come in at about 5%, and the rest is the redevelopment cost reimbursements or projects that are going to happen within the corridor. So let me highlight what we're doing within the corridors that are proposed in the budget. We have $3.55 million budgeted this year, and it incorporates the wayfinding and placemaking activities in the Alameda corridor between Sheridan and generally Allison Way. It would have some landscaping. The landscaping would be some pilot plots in the area to start looking at what would be the final design across the corridor. We want to walk our talk. Manicured is expensive. We have water taps that are associated with it. And as a city, from a sustainability, that is not the best practice. But we also have Xeriscape that is consistent in the corridor right at this point in time, and we have frequent calls as the Xeriscape seeds out. It looks like weeds, and it's about 4 or 5 times a year we get calls, why aren't we mowing and taking care of that? So through this, we hope we can find some different Xeriscape design and incorporate that through the corridor. This is a gateway corridor coming into the city, and we want to demonstrate that through this work. There's several incomplete sidewalks in the corridor. We're going to go out and complete those sections and put a budget to those. And some of those are just a sea of asphalt right now that are incorporated as part of a parking lot as you go further east. So we're proposing that we start finishing off the sidewalks to have that enhancement. We have some development projects that are coming in and that are also going to be completing some of that. The Alameda Teller intersection, it's in some improvements that are also scheduled to be complete through a public improvement agreement with the district in Belmar. So we're combining in that partnership efforts to get that intersection complete, which would include some pedestrian enhancements of crossing Alameda and providing some safe haven for them, some signal improvements. The curb line on the south line needs to be shifted a little bit, and then some sidewalks that connect and bring people down Teller and cross over Alameda. So we'll be designing that, and this is a project that at this point in time, we haven't taken it through the design process, so our budget, we cannot predict it, but we're going to get into the design and then come back to the LRA and let you know the priority of how these costs can come out. There's some utilities. Over by Easter Seals, there is an old power line that can be buried, and we will first look at the use of our fund through the Excel 1% fund, I think it is. If not, we wanted to provide that opportunity to enhance that corridor. It's one of the in that eastern section, one of the remaining utility lines that are still there. And then here's the facade business grant program. We're in conversations with some developers or property owners right at this point in time to try for them to enhance their facades and their parking lots like we did at Lamar Station Plaza. These projects include design and construction management consultant services that would be part of that. And we're in a discussion with Public Works. Some of the projects could be designed by them. So that's what's included in the budget. For West Colfax Corridor, if you remember in the Business Improvement District proposal, they are working on some monumentations. This completes some of the monumentations of unanticipated costs for foundations in the medians that are needed to be done. And it also includes a facade business grant program that we'll bring to you first quarter of 2017 for a total of $125,000. So there's a big difference between the two quarters and the revenue that comes in. One thing I forgot to mention is that each of the books for each of those areas must be kept separate. So revenue that's generated within that quarter must be spent in that corridor. So with that, if there's any questions other than that, ask for approval. So.
Thank you, Ms. Nealon. You do a nice job of trying to simplify some complicated things, but there's some nice projects listed in there Before we get to any questions, I'm just going to open the public hearing on Resolution LRA 2016-4. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Any questions? And if no questions, I would entertain a motion.
Chairman Paul, I move for adoption of Resolution LRA 2016-4.
Second?
A motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, please cast your votes. And that passes 11 ayes, 0 nays. Thank you very much. Any general business? Seeing none. Before we adjourn, I just want to thank our police agents for taking good care of us tonight, keeping us safe, and we are adjourned at 9:02 p.m. Thank you.